Good morning, everyone. I know a few people are still logging in, but let's get started. I want to thank you for joining us today. My name is Jack McDougall, and I'm the President and CEO of the Greater Washington Board of Trade. Where to start? Global events continue to overshadow, everything that we're grappling with here in our region. So I just wanted to start by saying our thoughts are with the people of Ukraine this morning, and we certainly do encourage even greater efforts to bring this conflict to an end. There's always something to wake up to as we continue to move forward. And closer to home, we continue working through multiple issues and struggles as we emerge from the pandemic. In particular, retail and hospitality have been hit especially hard and our discussion today will explore the future of these industries in our region. This is the third program in our Future of Work series, and I want to thank our sponsors, Crown Castle, Bank of America, and Verizon, for their support to make this event and the entire series possible. I also want to thank our knowledge partners, APCO Worldwide and McKinsey & Company. Now I'm very pleased to welcome our terrific presenter and moderator, Lisi DeCanto. He's the Managing Director for the Washington, D.C. office at APCO Worldwide. Lisi, thank you very much for your support and participation. Lisi, first he'll provide some background to set the stage. And then he'll facilitate a conversation with our panelists. And they include Chad Horrell, Senior Manager East at Doordash, Christine Ketmer, the Senior Director of Global Enterprise Insight and Strategy at Marriott International, and Karen Strack, Senior Vice President of Marketing at Unibail Rodamco Westfield. So thank you all for joining us this morning. Very much appreciated. Looking forward to the conversation. As a reminder, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A feature so that we can get to those at the end. And with that, Lisi, I'll now turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Good morning. As you said, we are experiencing enormous change in our world, not only today, but certainly over the last several years. I want to welcome everyone to our conversation today about that, the transformational change that has taken place across every industry and every part of our country, and certainly global. And this is change that has touched every one of us in one way or another. We have seen the greatly accelerated rise in social consciousness, and we've also seen the technological, digital, and workforce transformations that we've seen across our nation and right here in our own region. The retail and hospitality industries have had to quickly reimagine their business models, leading to immense and in many ways near immediate innovation. Today, we're going to dive in and we're going to look into how these innovations, their impacts, and how we continue to move forward, what that looks like, and how do we continue to move as a region in inclusive and purposeful ways. We're going to dive into how e-commerce and digitalization and artificial intelligence and data analytics is moving forward. And we're going to see how they've changed the playing field for the retail industry and what further innovations are on the horizon. We're also going to talk about how the market is changing and what companies are doing to adapt and how leaders are embracing this substantial change and navigating certainly unpredictable situations with health and safety at stake. We're going to take a look at how companies are, in fact, putting people first. And throughout all of this, as we look to the future and what is next for the retail and hospitality industries, we're also going to take a closer look at what we've learned and how we ensure that we're bringing every one of us along in this journey. Inclusivity is here to stay, and it's at the core of every part of industry and company, and leaders are taking clear and actionable steps toward a more equitable society, both here in our region and across the nation and across the globe. These businesses are leaning into their role as change drivers in society, and communicating values and corporate purpose far and wide is now the standard practice. I'm excited to have a very distinguished panel of leaders right here in our region to unpack all of these questions. I want to welcome Chad Horrell, who is the Senior Manager of East Doordash. Chad has 20 years of experience managing public policy initiatives at the federal, state, and local level. And since November of 2020, Chad has worked for Doordash, helping to build the company's brand with policy and community leaders, working to ensure a viable marketplace for delivery that remains fair to restaurants, delivery drivers, and customers alike. Chad, manages Doordash's policy engagements in the East region, which run from Delaware south to Florida, including Alabama and Mississippi. Welcome, Chad, to the conversation this morning. I also want to welcome Christine Ketmer. She is the Senior Director with the Global Enterprise and Insight Strategy Team at Marriott International. She formulates enterprise-level customer insights and helps define long-range strategic planning efforts there. Most recently, Christine led the global brand management function for JW Marriott, overseeing the brand strategy, planning and performance development and growth for 95 plus hotels. And among other things, Christine has spearheaded the rollout and training of the evolved JW Marriott positioning work to various property teams across the Asia Pacific region. Thank you very much, Christine, for joining us. And Karen Strack, who serves as Senior Vice President of Marketing in the United States for Unibail Rodamco Westfield, the premier global developer and operator of flagship shopping and lifestyle destinations. She's responsible for positioning URW to become a more customer-focused digital and data-driven company, leveraging predictive marketing, mobile marketing, and loyalty programs, in addition to developing innovative solutions which optimize the customer journey. Passionate about developing and grooming talent for success, Karen also has the ability to inspire her teams through challenge and motivation, and has been a hallmark of her highly distinguished career. With her definitive people-centric leadership style, creative design thinking, and strong financial acumen, Karen has been able to consistently spur impactful innovation, operational effectiveness, and revenue generation across multiple disciplines and core business divisions. Karen, Christine, and Chad, thank you very much. Let's dive right into our conversation today. You know, when I think about the pandemic, I think about the beginning of this a couple years ago. We saw massive layoffs, store closings, shortages of everyday goods. We all, in so many ways, have gone through this. And we also saw a rise in jobs available for frontline workers. And in addition, throughout all that, we saw a massive rise in social consciousness. Christine, I want to start with you. We know that things have improved since the start of the pandemic. Tell us a little about the innovations that have kept Marriott and the industry that you're in going, and has made the company even more inclusive and adaptive. Christine?
Sure. Thank you very much. And good morning, everybody. It's great to be here. In terms of Marriott's response to the pandemic, we've always been a company that has put people first. That's been the underlying business principle since we started about 95 years ago now, this spring. And when we think about the culture of putting people first, it's the idea that if we take care of our associates, they'll take care of the guests, and the guests will come back. And so that was our primary focus. We really wanted to make sure that we were taking care of not only the people who were working at our hotels, but of course, prospective guests, all the impact of the business when we saw people do cancellations, when there were different things that were happening right away with the pandemic. And we wanted to reassure people that when they were comfortable to travel again, that we would have the different safety mechanisms in place, that protocols would be there. So we rolled out things like our commitment to clean, which was all about making sure that we had sufficient cleaning protocols and everything in place, so that, again, people would feel really comfortable when they were ready to travel, and knowing that travel would always be there. And I think that when the furloughs first occurred, we were really trying to make sure that for our frontline associates, that again, we were trying to get them back on property as quickly and safely as possible, but they were prepared to handle anything that came their way in terms of the guest experience side too. So again, a lot of innovation occurred very quickly to respond nimbly and effectively, but we were really excited that people, once they were feeling comfortable to travel again, we know people are still starting to travel even a couple of years later. It might be the first time that they're going internationally or domestically somewhere. We're ready to meet them where they're comfortable. And again, from an associate standpoint, it was just all about taking care, making sure that we were there for our associates.
Karen, one of the places that people are traveling again are malls. And you and URW know a lot about that. How have you kept going with the innovations within URW and in the industry, and how have you leaned into your responsiveness into inclusivity and adaptivity?
Yeah, so it has been quite interesting, similar to Christine. In our operation of our malls, it really depended on county restrictions and whether the shopping center was indoor or outdoor. Most of our California centers are outdoors, and many of our tenants were deemed essential, which helped keep them open to the public. But what we did in supporting the non-essential tenants is we immediately rolled out curbside, allowing them to still be able to provide products and services that to people that could just drive right up and pick up bags. When the restrictions started to lift, we rolled out something called Line Pass, which actually allowed the shopper to make an appointment to get in line so that they weren't standing, for hours on end trying to get back into their favorite store. And it was great because it encouraged appointment-based shopping. And from that, we actually saw that those individuals were coming into the stores and they were converting into a sale immediately, which was a really big deal because the retailers were really struggling to even staff appropriately. Many people were concerned about coming back to work. We also saw that in our warm weather areas, we had micro fitness tenants come into the common area. So people like Soul Cycle, Orange Theory, Equinox, they took over parking lots, they took over rooftops, and that was really needed because in the middle of the pandemic, I think everyone was looking for an opportunity for some self-care. And one of the things that I really love about what happened with that is that as the restrictions lifted and tenants started to go back to what was considered kind of the new normal, we saw a lot of these micro fitness establishments looking at what could really the future of an outdoor element look like, because people really enjoyed working out outside, and so we've seen a little bit of a shift in their model. Similar to Christine, for our internal employees, this was a really critical piece because we had so many essential uses in our malls. Our mall employees continued to work day in and day out, and we looked at those employees as essential workers, and we worked diligently to support them with resources and rolled out new operational practices. And that was really to ensure that the shopper and our employees knew that they were a critical piece of our priority in ensuring that we were providing a safe and proper place in all of the things that we were doing. So, it's great to be on a panel like this and hear Christine talk about her stories, because as an industry, I think there's so many similarities, and we can really relate to one another. So thanks for asking that question.
I want to remind everyone to submit their questions in the Q&A. We're going to try to take as many as we can as we continue to move forward in this very timely conversation. Chad, I want to lift up one comment that Karen mentioned. She said during this time, everyone was looking for an opportunity for self-care. And one of those ways, we ate a lot more. And I can't think of too many industries that we depended more on than Dashers, if you will. Tell us a little about how you went through and the innovations that you saw, and how did you manage to keep the environment inclusive and adaptive during this time?
Yep. Yeah, at Doordash, I think one of our founding principles is that one of our founding principles is to connect communities, and I think that's one thing that we definitely accomplished during the pandemic. We're right now, I think, an eight and a half year old company. Was founded in 2013. The amount of business being done through the platform, whether it be with restaurants, customers, Dashers, definitely increased. The volume through the platform increased, obviously, over the pandemic, because as you saw, indoor dining restrictions come into place in a lot of areas, particularly here in the DMV. The only avenue that restaurants had to connect with some of their customers, particularly, was through delivery. This was a way for customers to you can now get a lot of food delivered to your house these days, but not everybody wants to cook 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. So I think food delivery was a new avenue that some people had been trying out in the years prior to the pandemic, but it definitely took off during the pandemic. And I think that Doordash and third-party food delivery was kind of a lifeline to, all aspects of our platform, over the course of the pandemic. For restaurants, clearly avenue to connect with their customers. For the customer, a way to still enjoy the food that you would normally, go out to dinner with your friends, your family on a Friday, Saturday night. And I think, the other thing that is often overlooked is the critical piece of our platform is the delivery network itself, which is made up of dashers. These are delivery drivers, across the country. And I think, everybody remembers, the beginning of the pandemic, the economic downturn that the hit that we took, say that first month. A lot of people were furloughed from their jobs. Some were laid off entirely. Our dasher network increased during that time period, and picking up food, delivering it to people, was an opportunity for folks who were looking to fill a financial hole that had existed, or I guess was created at the beginning of the pandemic, in a lot of cases. And obviously, as volume ticked up, more orders were being placed on the platform. We needed a lot more delivery drivers, at the same time. And I think, everybody, that piece really did come together. And I think the most important thing to point out, on our dashers, is 55% of them are women nationwide. They on average earn $27 per active hour, so it's well above the minimum wage. That includes tips across the board. And we've also been able to sustain that delivery network over the course of the pandemic. In fact, in 2021 alone, even as indoor dining started coming back, we had 6 million dashers dash at least once over the course of the year. And that was, I think, half of that 3 million dashed in the fourth quarter of last year. So it's definitely something that is maintaining. 90% of them say only dash less than 10 hours a week. So even as they've, gotten new jobs, or whether it be part-time, full-time, they're still dashing for a few hours, here and there over the course of each and every week, whether it be to, meet new financial goals or fill a financial hole.
Speaking about dashing, I want to turn and dash over to data analytics and artificial intelligence. It has been a reliable factor for improving unique customer experience and guest experiences. We've all seen the changing mandates. We've seen the shifting local safety measures, and we've seen other changing variables. Karen, as we think about URW, I saw recently an interview that your chairman did, Leon Bresser. He said shopping malls are back. Are they back, and how have you at URW marketed to customers in ways that may be different than you did prior to the pandemic?
First of all, it's a great question, because I think we've always been a place of community, but what happened during the pandemic was we became hyper local. And what that really meant was we really leaned into supporting our tenants by helping do things like curbside, or creating places where Chad's business of Doordash and those dashers could drive up and pick something up. And we became much more of a partner to those businesses. In the end, our goal is to always connect the shopper to the tenant, whether it's a service that they're offering or a product that they're selling. And we've been able to really do that. And as we've come out and progressed in that process, what we're doing this year is we're having campaigns that show our actual shoppers that are part of showcasing some of the employees that actually work in the mall. I think many times, if you live in that community, that mall, and that mall becomes your mall. And that's a really important aspect of it, because we want to be able to deliver the services and experiences that you're looking for in that mall. And when we can amplify more choices, that really allows us to connect more with the community. So, we've seen an expansion in a lot of different retailers that are coming into some of the select malls that we have. We've been promoting our rewards platform, which is a cashback platform. It's a program where we really believe that we give you cash back when you shop with us, and it goes directly on your credit card, and you get to spend that money any way in which you'd like when you come back and visit with us. So We really believe that we're a place of community, and it's where a lot of firsts happen for people. It's their first job, their first date. Those types of things make that experience really quite special. And we're excited to be back open and operating.
Thank you. Christine, I want to go to you. We've seen throughout the waves of the pandemic how we've all had to be flexible and open-minded. And I should say I'm a proud Marriott Bonvoy member, and so I've stayed at your locations. And one of the things that I've noticed is the resiliency measures that you have put into place in order to sort of stabilize your business model and ensure a safe environment, both for people like me as a guest and your own personnel. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you've been acting in this way?
Sure. I love that word that you use, resiliency, because I think that it really embodies a lot of the perspective of the associates and the guests. I think from like just a pure safety and mechanism protocol standpoint, like I mentioned, the commitment to clean was one of the first initiatives that we rolled out. But then we really looked at like the business models for our hotels too, thinking about the new types of trips that people were taking. So whereas before we had a lot of our business coming from what we call the business transient, or people coming in for meetings, groups, events, that kind of thing. That was still happening to a small extent, but certainly people were shifting towards leisure trips. So they were doing staycations or schoolcations, more extended stays with their families, longer term where they may temporarily relocate. We saw the rise of digital nomads where people were going to different places and being in a different destination just for a change of scenery for an extended period of time. And I think what's really interesting, going back to the idea of resiliency, is that almost immediately when the pandemic first started, I think that there was this newfound appreciation for travel. Like people started making their bucket lists of where am I going to go immediately after this is all over, or what am I going to do? What's my next vacation? Or where I might have dreaded that business trip because I was having a flight delay or there was something that went wrong. Now I look forward to it, right? And I think that was one of the real clear insights when we were putting together this new campaign that we launched last summer, which was all about the power of travel, because we know travel has this transformative power to unite and to heal and to get people together. And I think that people were feeling a little bit more resilient and a little bit more intentional and grateful. And when they were traveling, they were doing it with a newfound appreciation because it was something that was almost taken away from them. So thinking about all those elements together, it's just really helped not only, again, from an associate standpoint, but certainly like people like yourself who are Marriott Bonvoy members who are part of our loyalty program, and that we want to just make sure people know, again, when they're comfortable, we're here for you. We're ready to welcome you wherever. We have nearly 8,000 hotels in about almost 140 countries. So we're very much a global company with all of our brands all over the world.
Chad, we've seen, I think, many of the resiliency measures that have been taken in within your particular network. Can you talk a little bit about how you've moved forward and made sure that the environment is safe both for dashers and customers like so many of us?
Yeah, sure. I think the big thing for Doordash, over the course of the pandemic has been scale. Obviously, as volumes increase, we've had to scale up the overall business across the board. And again, I wanted to also just kind of point out, I mean, we have a very unique marketplace in that it's three-sided. Most companies are working directly with the customer, but we've got three sides. We've got the restaurants that are restaurant partners that we contract with to provide that food delivery. We've got the customers, obviously, that are coming to our platform to place the orders, and then obviously the dashers, which I touched on previously. And obviously over the course of the pandemic, we had to make sure that we were providing value for all three sides of that marketplace, or else, if any one of them does not see value, they go away. They no longer have the service. If the service doesn't work for them, we can't get them what they need, during the pandemic. And so I think that's probably been the biggest challenge, is trying to make sure that, with all of the lockdowns, with all the restrictions that were in place, across the board, during the pandemic, that everybody was able to still see value in that service, get what they needed, what they demanded as the customer, and got it in a safe way. I think, one of the big things to point out, at least on our platform, is for Dashers, they're probably, while restaurant workers clearly are, there to cook the food and everything, Dashers are the ones, they're kind of the link between the restaurant and the customer. They're going to the restaurant to pick up the food. They're going to the customer's house. But I think, with the technology that we have, there's a way for the restaurant to see when the Dasher arrives, so they can wait outside, so that they can, meet somebody at a window when the time is right to pick up that food, so as to minimize the overall contact between the two people, obviously during the pandemic when we're supposed to be social distancing. And then also when it's being delivered to their house, you can also just leave it at the door. So there does not have to actually be an interaction in person between the Dasher and the customer there. Now, obviously, some people like to, say thank you. I'm one of them. Like, I usually ask the Dasher to leave it at the door, and, the app will let me know when they're arriving, so I can, as they're walking away, can say thank you for bringing this by and everything. So I think, that's kind of been the big thing that, we've had to try to make sure that it is working for everybody. Part of that has also included providing all the PPE that is necessary for Dashers to feel comfortable to do the work on a daily basis. Because if they're not feeling comfortable, then it's not going to work for them, and it's not going to work for us either. And I think the other thing that we've also had to do, which I think all of us have had to cope with during the pandemic, is there's also been restrictions put on the overall system. There've been restrictions on our contracts with restaurants that has kind of affected, the overall pay structure for the service. And, that's something that we've had to cope with over the course of the pandemic and figure out how to ensure that the service remains reliable for everybody.
That's an important part of our conversation today, the question of restrictions. I want to get to that in a moment, but I want to lift up what you said, essentially talking about your connection to community and being at the door to say thank you, as so many of us do. Daniel Cernovitz has a question here, Chad, about just that, if you will, sort of how is Doordash working with neighbors in urban locations like Capitol Hill, where, to quote him, where neighbors have expressed concern about traffic, blocked sidewalks, and bicycle lanes. And then he wants to ask, where else are you looking to expand into Greater Washington? Very quickly, Chad, how are you working with all of the concerns that communities have, and where else are you looking at expanding potentially in the region?
Yeah, I think to that question, I mean, any community that we're going into, we want to be a community partner. I will point out, one particular thing that, we've launched across the country and have done a lot of work with in DC, and that is a project called Project Dash, where we're actually working with local food banks to help deliver food from the food bank to the end user. There's a lot of solutions that our platform can provide local communities. We want to be a community partner. We want to work within the neighborhoods, and any community that we are coming in, our door is always open, and we're always interested in trying to look for ways that we can make the service better for the community.
Karen, talking about how we make the service better, I want to spend a few minutes now on automation, a trend, of course, that started before the pandemic, but certainly has been accelerated throughout this pandemic. Why is automation so important, both to the retail and hospitality industries, especially as we are attempting to try to emerge from the pandemic as we speak?
Yes, I think we saw so much just accelerate. People had plans in their pipeline, and they needed to react very quickly. And one of the main pieces that we saw was our retailers had line of sight to real-time view of inventory, and that allowed them to do things like click and collect, where you could buy online and pick up in the store or pick up at curbside. And this was a really critical piece for some of these brick and mortar locations, because they were able to use their stores as fulfillment centers. And that was a really critical piece also because we saw hiccups in the logistics pipeline, and whether it was the trucking shortage or actually getting the products overseas. So leveraging the inventory that sat in the the four walls of their brick and mortar location was really critical. And then you coupled that with their ability to have, pickup or delivery services. It really provided kind of that satisfaction of same day shopping for many of the retailers.
Karen, Jack Calavertino asks a question about how did and is URW making the case to local authorities to allow more connections and in-person activity, the importance, as he says, of in-person activities to local economies and people's mental health. Lifting up what Chad mentioned a few moments ago in terms of restrictions, as he says, especially with some localities holding on to these restrictions much longer than others. How is URW grappled with these restrictions, and what are the lessons that you've learned that you are taking forward with you now?
We have worked very diligently with the state, the local government, whether it's the state or the county, because as I think everyone saw, although the state might lift restrictions, then it went down to the county level. And so, we had to work through every single mayor's office to really speak to the proper protocols that we were putting into place, the things that we were doing in regards to connecting with our retailers. Our retailers and our tenants really looked to us to be able to say, what is happening at the local level. You have companies like an H&M that is, in Europe. And when they're operating 200 stores in the US, that's a very difficult task for them to take on, to understand exactly what communication needs to be happening to their employees at that location. So we, our government affairs department and the leadership team within Unibail Rodamco Westfield went and worked very specifically in different cities and counties where we operate malls to sit down and talk about, what does that look like? I, in particular, sat on the mayor's board for the reopening of the city of Los Angeles, and I sat with other mall operators in the local area where we worked diligently with a third-party consultant to put together what we believed were the best safety protocols really for the employees and the shoppers, to make sure that it was a safe environment for people to return to what we do really want to have in real life experiences. And as things have reopened, we've seen that more and more. We're bringing our events platform back, especially in our outdoor malls where we have open air arenas, and we can provide things like a concert during the Super Bowl in Los Angeles, which was a really exciting weekend for us. So, we know as much as you do that people want to have in real life experiences. And so we work diligently with each city and government officials to make sure that we can represent the community.
Thank you, Christine. How have you and JW Marriott dealt with these restrictions?
Yeah, so from a property standpoint, it's been interesting. Of course, we've looked to, again, reinvent the business model a bit and think about like the different opportunities to embrace technology, but also consider local guidance and ordinances that are in place. So I think that what's been really interesting has been the way that people have been responding to, they still want to have technology because it's that action reaction, but they want that in-person connection. So the fine balance between the two. And nothing can replace, like Karen was just saying, that in-person connection. So making sure that we're thinking about how we can be high tech and high touch. I think a lot of the things that we were already rolling out when it comes to mobile key, to mobile check-in, being able to do in-app messaging for service requests. So if you need extra towels or amenities, or you want housekeeping on demand, like that was all stuff that we were doing before the pandemic, and it became even more accelerated as time went along. And then we were reinventing like our business models and thinking about alternative uses of spaces. So we had more outdoor dining, enabling social distancing practices, looking at in-room dining, so our room service where people could order on their mobile devices, that they could have food brought to them with minimal contact from our associates, just again, making people feel really comfortable. And certainly from an, again, a balance standpoint, it was about that technology and the ability to utilize their devices, but also also trying to replace it and supplement it with that high level of service as well.
Chad, making people feel comfortable, one way is through convenience. You've said that convenience is the growing characteristic that all consumers are looking for at these days. How has DoorDash confronted some of these restrictions? And then how have you perhaps used automation to address some of the challenges that you faced throughout the pandemic?
Yeah, I think convenience is definitely something that customers are looking for today. I mean, it's nothing that is brand new to the pandemic. We've been seeing it over the past 10, 20 years. I think, there are a number of different services that we're starting to utilize more on a daily basis. But I'm not here to say that convenience is the end all be all. I mean, from our end, I mean, even as indoor dining resumed, people are going back to the restaurant if they feel comfortable, but they're also still ordering food through delivery as well. So you are still seeing convenience grow, even coming out of the pandemic, even more than, as it was during the pandemic. And I think that's something that, we've had to adapt to, even ourselves, where, I think our service was set up to serve that customer demand. We've had to make sure that the overall product that we provide, meets the customer demand.
I want to thank everyone who's continuing to submit questions through the Q&A. I see some have come in through the chat. We'll try to get to that, but we'll try to get through as many of the questions that are coming through. Christine, I want to go back to you, talk about digital transformation here for just a moment. Certainly the pandemic has acted as a catalyst for digital transformation in sense of the need for contactless transactions or deliveries. What are some of the technological implementations that you're seeing at JW Marriott and across the industries? And despite some of these implementations of these technological efforts, how do you continue to keep people at the center of mind?
Yeah, so I think a lot of that just has to do with some of the core values of our company. We've always been about putting people first, embracing change, acting with integrity, really just trying to think about like a people-centric model. And as I've said before, it's about meeting people where they're at and where they're comfortable. And I think it's the balance of that high tech, high touch. I really do believe that people want to have that in-person connection. I saw that there was a question in the chat related to meetings and events. And I think people, again, going back to missing the in-person opportunities and connections, like there's this new sense of gratitude when you've been connecting with people in a virtual environment and then all of a sudden you get to meet them in real life. It's a totally different dynamic and atmosphere. And so nothing can really replace that. But I think to make people feel comfortable, we certainly want to think about ways that we can activate our events in a way that is socially distant, that people, you've seen in different conferences, sometimes people have varying lanyards where they'll wear something. If they're green, they're comfortable having like a little bit more close proximity and contact. If it's yellow, they might do like a fist pump or something to like interact with people. And red, it's like a please, kind of keep your distance approach. A lot of our hotels implemented on-site testing. They were working very closely again with local ordinances on masks and varying restrictions. So just being adaptable and nimble and flexible, but also making sure that, as you said, we're putting people first because we know people want that in-person connection and opportunity.
Karen, I know in URW, one of the biggest transformations around these QR codes. We all saw that commercial during the Super Bowl. Well, we were chasing the QR code around the screen, trying to figure out what it was. How have you seen the catalyst of digital transformation play out within and across your properties? And how have you been able to keep people first in mind throughout?
Yeah, so I was the person chasing that commercial, trying to find my phone to see what were they promoting. It's interesting. We used QR codes for years and we couldn't get any level of engagement on them. It was less than 5%. And prior to the pandemic, I remember sitting in a staff meeting saying, we're no longer putting this up. Like we're walking away from this strategy. And we fast forward, we saw this quickest adoption rate ever. Even to this day, restaurants have eliminated menus because of QR codes. And in addition, that's played into some sustainability goals that these restaurants have had. So, I think that the consumers become very comfortable with what a QR code is and how to use it. So that has actually allowed us to provide quicker updates to our directories for navigation, along with services and amenities. Even, when we have tenants coming into our centers and they, many times people don't know what that tenant is when we put it up on a barricade, coming soon. And this allows the tenant to actually tell a larger story to the shopper, which I think is a really important way to message and get people excited about what is to come. So I'm excited about the QR code, and I actually believe it's here to stay.
Did you catch the QR code? I waited too long.
I got it. It was all about cryptocurrency.
Speaking about getting it, one thing that we all faced during the pandemic for sure was what has been proverbially called the Great Resignation, something that has impacted certainly all of you and all of us here in the region and across the country for sure. Christine, I want to spend a few minutes talking with you to see how the Great Resignation has impacted the market in your respect, and what steps are you taking to attract and retain the top talent?
Sure. So we've had definitely an impact. I think it has been the case across all of our companies, and definitely in the retail and hospitality industries in particular. Certainly, a lot of our properties are trying to rehire or hire new associates and look at creative mechanisms to retain those people. So we've been doing hiring on the spot. We've had virtual and in-person career fairs. We've been trying to encourage retention bonuses after certain periods of time when people stay at our properties and just work for us for an extended period. But I think, again, what's so unique about the hospitality track, and particularly in a company like Marriott International, is that there are so many opportunities, not only domestically, but globally. And a career in hospitality, I've had managers who started off as people who worked in food and beverage as banquet servers, and then rose up to be 2 levels from our CEO over the course of a 35-year career. And you're able to work across, again, different geographies, functions, disciplines, and there are so many unique opportunities. So highlighting some of those stories of legacy associates who have made the moves. You talked at the beginning when we were doing the introduction. I've had the fortune and privilege, I honestly have lost count at this point, but I've probably gone to 25 different countries over the 8 years that I've been at Marriott International, just traveling the world and helping to represent the company, but also doing in-person trainings and facilitation sessions and connecting with our teams and talking to our guests and doing things firsthand. It's such a great industry. I can't say enough good things about it. And I hope that people find it as a stimulating, exciting career, because there are just countless opportunities. So trying to encourage not only, again, from a property standpoint, but what we call a broke property at our corporate headquarters, which is, we're about to have a new building that will be opening later this summer, which we're really excited about in Bethesda. Just trying to, again, as you said, recruit and retain people that will be the right talent and will want to make a career out of it.
Chad, how are you making people feel valued and included during this Great Resignation, as they say? What is the impact of the Great Resignation on Dashers, and how are you coming through it?
I would say, the one thing that we hear from Dashers across the board is flexibility. That's what drives them to the work that we provide. I think I mentioned earlier, 90% of all Dashers work less than 10 hours a week on the platform. So, this isn't a full-time job. In fact, I think it's only 1% of all Dashers work more than 30 hours a week. So, they're not coming to the platform, for that full-time job, that 40-hour a week job. They're coming for 5 hours, 6 hours to do stuff in between, make deliveries in between soccer practice, things like that. And I think for us, it's a matter of working from a policy perspective. I think it's working to support them. In some places, obviously part-time work, it means different things in different places, and a lot of folks have different ideas of what that should look like on the whole. But, the one thing that I always hear, from our dashers and others, in the gig economy is, if this changes, I might not be willing to do it any longer, so we want to always make sure that, we're supporting our dashers and making sure that the work that is provided is a type of work in a manner that they want, that, that they want to come every day to work in, whether that is just for 2 hours or, 30 hours that week. So I think, that's on that front. I think, flexibility is the number one thing that we kind of focus on that front.
Karen, I want to ask a question that's come through on the chat to you in particular from Denise Ware Jackson. She says, as an educator in higher learning, have or do you work with colleges and universities to promote the hospitality retail industry to encourage students to obtain degrees that lead to careers in the workplace? And what are some of the marketing tools that are being used to recruit students into the mid-level positions within the industry? How are we, you at URW, connecting with the community, connecting with higher education to sort of promote working with URW and the surrounding communities that you're in?
It's a great question, and we actually do quite a few different approaches. One is we do have a college recruiter on staff in our HR department, and she goes out to a lot of the local colleges where we operate shopping centers or airports in our airports division to educate all of the students in regards to opportunities that we have, whether it is in the marketing department or in real estate. Leasing's a core piece of our business. And we also have an international graduate program, which is a great program that we bring in multiple recent grads, and they have an opportunity to do 3 rotations within our company. So, and those rotations are of their choice. So they can spend 3 or 4 months in the marketing department, 3 or 4 months in the real estate department, 3 or 4 months in the accounting department or in our asset management department. It gives them a very full perspective of our business. We also do a summer intern program for college students. And that's a great program because they work in cohorts on some special projects and have an opportunity to learn a lot about airports and the mall business, and it's a really cohesive program. And we've actually seen a couple of those interns come back multiple years. So it's quite fun. As a senior leadership team, we're extremely passionate about recruiting the next generation of talent, and we all work to mentor those interns as they come into the organization. So I can't say enough about the efforts that we are leading in trying to promote the hospitality industry.
We have about 11 minutes left in our conversation, several more questions that we want to try to get to. I'm going to try to get to all the questions in the Q&A here as possible. Christine, I know JW Marriott spends a lot of time thinking about this question of recruitment and getting more students and working with the higher ed. What are some of the things that you're doing?
Sure. So similar to Karen, we have a rotational program that we do with recent college graduates. It's called our Voyager program. And then in honor of our late CEO, Arnie Sorensen, last year we launched a partnership with Howard University locally to really try to encourage students from various backgrounds to apply for opportunities within the hospitality industry. And it's just a wonderful again, opportunity for people to be thinking about careers and the different experiences that they can have within hospitality and that they can learn and grow and develop. And so certainly a similar kind of approach and just recruiting people and keeping them on board for a long time. It's just a company where people, I think, like to stick around, and it's an industry that's an exciting one that enables a lot of different experiences too.
Terrific. Question for all of you. When we were talking about automation a few moments ago, Wander Gispert asked, are any of you receiving backlash from unions and others regarding the need to automate more in the industry? Chad, let's start with you.
Yeah, I don't know that we're necessarily receiving backlash. I mean, I think that, what we're actually trying to work with a number of the unions, around our service. But I think, the one thing that, we've got to make sure that we come to the table with all the time is the workers that we have, that we're keeping their best interest in mind at the end of the day, which is, this is a new type of work than, maybe what we were thinking of, 20, 30 years ago. So we've got to look at everything a lot differently. And I think, the biggest thing that we hear from our Dashers is, number one, I mentioned flexibility. We're also trying to work with a number of entities, a lot of policymakers, on how can we actually start to provide Dashers in the gig economy with more benefits. On our platform, we do provide them with insurance. We provide them with some additional benefits here and there, but there's got to be a way for us to actually provide more support for them on the whole. And that's something that, we've been working with a lot of policymakers and a lot of stakeholders, obviously in that area to help develop.
Karen, very quickly.
Sorry, I needed to take my mute off. Similar to Chad, we haven't seen any type of backlash. We operate at World Trade Center. We see the Port Authority as our partner in how we bring again and connect our shopper to the retailer, and they have similar goals as we do. So we work hand in hand with them in how we move forward and decisions that are made.
I want to now spend the last few minutes talking specifically about each of your companies. You all are doing incredible and amazing things and really innovating as you do that throughout the region, and certainly in all the places that you're in. Christine, you talked many minutes ago about your new headquarters in Bethesda. All excited for that. Tell us a little bit about that headquarters. And I understand that we should all know about the design lab. What is that about?
Sure. Yeah. So we're very excited. We're on the cusp of opening this brand new state-of-the-art headquarters building, which will be in downtown Bethesda. There will be a brand new Marriott Hotel that's actually opening next week. I had the chance to go visit that a few weeks ago, and it looks fantastic. It's about 2 blocks from the metro station there. It's right near about 200 different local businesses and restaurants nearby, which will be great for the local business economy as well. But it's going to be a state-of-the-art facility. It's going to have everything you can think of. I can't remember how many floors it has. I want to say about 20 floors, but it includes everything from a brand new learning and development center, fitness center, on-site activities, and this design lab, which is really cool. It's our center for innovation, which is where we're going to be partnering with various companies to really think about like the future guest experience and how we can bring together partnerships of some of our really diverse suppliers and enable like just the most optimal experience on site for our guests. Mr. Marriott is famous for saying that success is never final. So innovation has always been something that's part of our blood and part of our DNA. And I think this design lab will be one thing. We'll also have this evolved version of what we call M Live, which is our real-time communications hub and social media monitoring studio. And we'll have additional guest rooms. We've always had this at our previous headquarters where we have model rooms so that when prospective owners are coming through or we're working with the brand teams and we're trying to think about maybe a new bed design or a shower model or something within the public space of a hotel, that we can have like guests come through, that we can have others be seeing these model rooms, and just again, enabling a great experience for our guests and for the associates. So lots more to come. They just rolled out a few more pieces of information to us as associates this week, and I think we're really all excited not only to be in person but in this great new building and back together again as well.
We are all excited for that too. I'm super excited as a Marriott Bonvoy member too. So that's really awesome. We have about 5 minutes. Want to continue to go through the questions here. Chad, no doubt that in the lockdown and as we continue to go through this pandemic, one thing that has surged is DoorDash's market share on the users of the app and delivery services altogether. Is that going to be a sustainable model for DoorDash and the delivery service here moving forward? What do you think?
I think where we sit today, undoubtedly, we see a market that only has room to grow. I think, we saw a 35% increase in the number of orders placed on our platform last year. And again, this is when indoor dining was coming back. over the course of the year. We had 25 million users actually in Q4 of last year. And like, what does that mean? As a country of 350 million people, that's, I think, a little less than 15% of, all Americans, are on our platform right now. So there's a lot of room to grow from a customer perspective. And our CEO, Tony Xu, always likes to point out the beauty of a service like this is everybody eats at least 3 meals a day. I mean, yes, there are some, maybe you cut it down to 2. And then there's those of us that maybe eat more than 3. So people are looking for variety. They're looking, whether it be the service that they're receiving, the food they're eating. So I definitely think there's room to grow from that perspective as it pertains to the customer as well. I think the other thing just to also note is restaurant sales on the platform increased by 23% last year, generating over $30 billion for restaurants across the country on Doordash. That also equated to $11 billion in earnings for Dashers. So I think that, everybody, again, getting back to what I said earlier, we want to make sure everybody sees value in it. And I think we are continuing to see value right now. And as these numbers grew last year, and hopefully they'll grow again next year and as we're moving forward. But I definitely think the market and all the indicators that we can see right now is pointing to more growth.
Thank you. So do all of us on this call today, on this webinar today, do we get a discount if we're at Doordash for our next order? I'll let you answer that offline. Thank you. Karen, I want to ask you very quickly in the few minutes that we have left. There's no question that the retail sector has seen so many tenants close shop because of lockdowns and related safety measures. And the question that we're getting in the chat in particular, that sort of goes to the question of what's the vision for commercial office buildings, particularly in metro downtowns? Are they going to be repurposed as condos, apartments, or retail establishments? And in your particular case, do you think that there's going to be a resurgence of what Leon Bressler, your chairman, said, like shopping malls are back? What's your thought, very quickly?
No, it is true. The shopping malls are back, and I'll echo what Leon has shared. Our sales have returned to pre-pandemic levels, and we've seen the shoppers, coming back in, buying everything from the home department has benefited from your remote workers, to the luxury sector of goods. Individuals have been, there is some pent-up demand, then they've wanted to really see something in person and make that purchase. I think one of the important factors is that our malls are made up of a lot more than just retail. So we have things like medical services and automotive and health options. Piggybacking off what Chad said, the restaurants, we did a huge campaign when we started to reopen that was like Hello Cloth Napkin. Some things that you just hadn't seen in a couple of years. People wanted to dine out, and they might have tried that restaurant through DoorDash, and they'd physically never been to that location. So we've seen people returning to the dental office to get their teeth cleaned, to eating dinner out, anything like that is, I think, been extremely beneficial for us. Repurposing. No, we haven't had a need to repurpose. We've seen, if anything, that the retailers see the value in a brick and mortar store, and they're looking actually to pick up space in potential places like the suburbs where the market shifted and people had this ability to have hybrid or completely work from home lives, and they've moved to the suburbs. And we've seen a lot of those markets accelerate in their traffic and their sales. So that's been really exciting. We are, if anything, we're looking at expanding with live, work, and play in that campaign, and we'll be doing at our Montgomery Mall a housing piece and extending that center, as well as at Garden State Plaza on the East Coast as well. So we're very excited to expand that community of offering.
Thank you. Karen Schrack from Uniball, Rodamco, Westfield, Christine Ketmer, Marriott International, and Chad Horrell from Doordash. Thank you all for a fantastic and great discussion today. And thank you for all the work that you continue to do in our communities. Jack, I'd like to turn it back to you. Thank you very much for hosting a terrific and timely conversation today.
Lisi, thanks, and thanks for facilitating. And Chad, Christine, and Karen, thank you so much for participating and sharing your thoughts with us. Great discussion. Already really positive feedback in the chat. I'm sure we'll get more as a result of that. So really do appreciate it. I do want to thank our sponsors once again, Crown Castle, Bank of America, and Verizon, and our knowledge partners, APCO Worldwide and McKinsey and Company. There were a couple of questions. This will be available on our website later this week. So if anybody wants to go back and check it out, please do so. And with that, we're a minute over time. So stay well and have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.